Greetings, Mason Storm here. Today we're going to be working on our chicken sandwiches again, and this time we're going to look at improving our final manufacturing process for repeatability and consistency. Stay tuned. For our ingredients, I have 1 tablespoon of onion powder, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of mustard powder, 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1 tablespoon of sriracha, 1 egg, and a package of chicken breasts. So now I'm going to take all the different ingredients and throw them together in my blender. Sorry, food processor. Although I do think my blender would be able to mix it as well. So we get our meat in there, all of our different spices and seasonings, and our egg. And then we assemble the processor and then fiddle with it till you figure out how to get it to turn on, and then we can allow the food processor to cut our meat into very small pieces and blend all the spices together inside of the meat. And it's going to create this solution that's almost a liquid, but it's still quite a solid, so it's kind of a slurry of processed chicken meat. And this is just fabulous. And it started shaking quite violently here, so I was having to hold it quite firmly so it wasn't a disaster. But once that's done, we can move on to the next step. So this next step is where the big difference comes from our previous attempt at making these. So I have my wax paper or parchment paper on top of the cookie sheet here, and I just kind of press it to get the form, and now I'm just going to coat the bottom generously with panko crumbs. Now the big advantage with this style of manufacturing versus the other one is that it's not as intensive in the breading process. It's quite a bit simpler that way. Although the negative of doing it this way is that you don't really get to bread the edges of the patties. You only can bread really the bottom and the top. And once we have a nice good distribution of our panko crumbs, we can proceed to get our meat stuff out and add our meat stuff to our panko crumbs. And as you can see, this stuff is incredibly thick. So we just want to drop down pieces of it so that when we press it out, that it starts to cover the whole entirety of the cooking sheet. So it really does need quite a lot of it. And if I was doing this again, I would probably do it a little bit differently, to go on a little bit thinner. Maybe add something to the chicken mixture so it wasn't so thick. But once we have our partial coverage down, we get another sheet of our parchment paper, and then we can get another cooking sheet and then simply press on top from the one side to the other. And this just kind of flattens it out, and it also pushes the panko crumbs right into the meat so that it's well bonded, which is just fabulous. But as you can see, we're missing some spots, so I'm just going to add some more meat to it, and then repeat the same process again to ensure that we have total coverage of the cookie sheet with our meat product. So we'll put our paper back on there, give it another press, and this time we should be golden, or at least golden enough. You're never really going to get it quite perfect, and if you put too much in there, it might creep up the sides, so that's a little bit of a negative aspect to this. Now we're going to get our panko crumbs and cover the top with panko. This part goes pretty quick, and it's quite easy to do. And something I did afterwards, after putting the panko on and then putting the wax paper, parchment paper on top, was decide that I wanted to make a second layer. Now this was a little bit of a mistake. There wasn't quite enough meat to make it proper, so I'm just going to fast forward through a lot of this footage really quickly. So now when it comes to dividing up our meat into proper size patties, I thought I would use a dough knife, and it didn't seem to work very well. It just kind of pressed the paper all over the place and made a mess of everything. So I moved over to using a real knife and kind of just did a bit of a grid slice through the paper to create the different patties. And one of the downfalls to not having enough meat on the second layer of meat is that some of the patties became really small, almost like chicken nuggets. So that was a little bit unfortunate. So I think next time I do this, I'll just do one layer, and then I might not even cut them inside of the tray. I might dump them out on a cutting board and then cut them that way, because that might be a little bit easier as well. But this technique does work. And afterwards, we're just going to throw them in the freezer. So I'm just going to put them in a plastic bag, kind of roll over the end, and let the freezing process begin. And here we are after they've been frozen for about 6 hours or so. I wanted to make one of them, so I thought I would pull them apart. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to transfer everything into a plastic bag. So I'm just going to rip off parts of the parchment paper and then just stack the patties in between, as well as look for some that are nice and square that I can fry up for my visual demo of the fabulous nature of this cooking process. This made quite a few patties, and I'm really happy with the yields with this compared to the other technique. I have a lot more patties this time than before, and I think it's about the same amount of chicken, and they're much more uniform. The big benefit with all the panko crumbs everywhere is nothing really sticks to the parchment paper, so it all separates really nice and easily. So that makes this process really nice, super easy, and the amount of mess that was made in this version compared to the last one was tremendously less. And I think that is a really big benefit, especially now that I have all these patties that I can eat for the next couple weeks or whatever. Anytime I want one, just throw one in the air fryer and we're good to go. So anyway, let's cook one of these up. So I'm going to be doing this on the stove top today just for fun. Got the cast iron out. Go for a little bit of a medium-high heat. Let it all kind of preheat away. Throw in a little bit of butter. And then realize that maybe a little less heat than this would be ideal. So it's just kind of heating away. And then we can dump our patties in and begin the cooking process. I decided to go with the 4x4 method. 4 minutes, flip 4 minutes. It seemed appropriate to me to be the correct cooking time at the temperature I was feeling in the pan. I like to cook with mathematics and numbers, so there's always that. And they weren't completely frozen. I guess if they were completely frozen, I probably would have dropped the heat even more, extended the cooking time 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 6 + 6. Who knows? Anyway, this worked really good for me, and I got that perfect level of golden brown, the color of perfection when it comes to cooking on the stove top. I guess it is also the color of perfection in many other things as well, but that's neither here nor there. So something you want to do before they're ready is make your sauce. So I have mayo, and I'm just going to add some mustard to it. Of course, mustard on its own is pretty good, but to take it to the next level, a little bit of sriracha really goes a long way to enhancing the flavor of the sauce. Now I'm going to toast some hamburger buns for this, and something I like doing is using frozen buns, let them thaw out a little bit, and then butter them before toasting them, and that makes it so that they got that perfect kind of buttery texture without being dry and crispy, because you don't want your burger buns to be dry and crispy, because that's just not very good. They need to be moist and complementary. So now for our final assembly. So we get our bun out, we apply the mayo to the top of the bun, we apply the patty to the bottom of the bun, we add lettuce for good measure. And you know what goes good with a chicken sandwich? Spaghetti squash. I just happen to have some on hand. I made it the other day. Stuff's really quite delicious. Don't know why restaurants don't serve it up with this combination, but that's neither here nor there. So if you make this, let me know what your thoughts are on it or what you think can be done to improve it. I think I'm starting to get closer to the level of perfection that I desire, and I think that's kind of good. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are, and if you like my content and like to see more of it, please like and subscribe. And until next time, stay awesome.